Well, welcome Canyon Creek to the Mother's Day 2015 Ask Me Anything panel. Maybe the best idea ever. Your opportunity to ask Brandon and Di that kind of thing that you would only ask them in the privacy of their own home and get their really honest, simple answer to it. In fact, my first question for you, Brandon, is what were you thinking when you decided Mother's Day, I'm going to have an Ask Me Anything panel?
Well, as I put together this message series, I knew that I wanted Di to share, and it would have been natural to have her share on Mother's Day, but I asked her, and she did not want to have to speak on Mother's Day.
Shocker.
So I thought, let's do the Q&A. That'll work.
Good. I think from your heart, too, you did want to be able to answer some of these really specific questions for your people as they keep coming up. It's been a lot of fun to see all of the questions roll in. In fact, we just want to thank all of you. You sent in way more questions than we expected. Lots of great questions. We just can't possibly use them all. So we've tried to cull it down to categories of questions, hopefully address everything that you all asked. But if you sent something in, we didn't use it, don't worry. We tried to get as close as we can. And we tried to pick some fun stuff out of there, too, that will reach, like I said, every audience. And so we'll just a few, giving you a time to answer as many as you can. To be honest with you, we had hoped as a staff that you guys would send in some really awkward questions that would make it sort of painful for Brandon and Di and funny for the rest of us. But you didn't do that. You just sent in really good questions. However, you did send in lots of questions about sex. And that feels awkward enough. So that makes it fun. So let's go ahead and get started there. So I'm just going to jump right in. So the first question that we got, and to be honest with you, we received this question a few times. So this is a question that's on your mind. Happy Mother's Day. How often do you think a married couple should be having sex?
Well, there we go.
Yeah, there it is. Let's jump right in.
I want to say a couple things. I want to say, first off, I have done many message series on the topic of sex. Several summers ago, I did a series through the Song of Solomon where basically it got affectionately referred to around the church as the Summer of Sex. So I encourage you to go to our podcast and listen to that series. We've done a bunch of standalone messages on the subject of sex that I think you'll find very open, honest, and blunt and embarrassing all at the same time. Right. But to answer your question, I would say a married couple should be having sex as frequently as possible.
Yeah, when? Oops.
I would just add in, just don't say no.
Okay, so you guys said you were going to keep it simple.
That's
like
simple. Keeping
it really simple. So let's be honest then. If that's your answer, and you guys have been married for a long time, everybody grows accustomed to everybody else. That's just the nature of things. And so if the answer is as frequently as possible, and really the more often the better, how do you possibly keep that fresh for 20 years, 30 years, for an entire marriage?
I actually did a message a couple of years ago, too, that actually centered right on this topic. And without redoing that entire message, I would say the illustration that I used, and I think it's a good one, is if you were going shopping and you were buying your meals from the frozen food aisle, and every single time you went to the exact same case and you chose the exact same frozen dinner, and that's what you prepared every single day, I think we all say we'd be quite bored. And boredom it can be an issue, and so you have to choose to make something else for dinner. Use your imagination.
Yeah, this is something that in all of those messages I have addressed. I would just say a couple things. One of the questions that I get asked a lot in pre-marriage counseling is there's this myth that marriage ruins sex, and marriage does not ruin sex. Little children ruin sex.
It's a true story.
Dogs.
The biggest thing is, within the confines of your married relationship, whatever you guys feel comfortable with, go for, as long as there's not another person involved. Okay. And again, we talked about this in messages before?
Well, that was sufficiently awkward. So there we go. And now it's out of the way. So really, it just gets better from here on out. So this actually takes sort of a serious bent, all on this topic of a healthy sex life in your marriage, which is vital to this ongoing connection. So if you begin to suspect that and that's what that first question is, that your sex life isn't healthy, what if you begin to suspect that your spouse has a problem for pornography? With pornography, what should you be looking for? What are the signs that that's part of the problem, that your sex life isn't healthy?
I actually think it's easier for a man to answer this because we got asked this question a lot. This is a frequent question that I get asked. And it gets asked and people don't even realize the question they're asking. Because what they'll say to me, almost like when I'm doing marriage counseling or meetings, they'll say things like, well, my husband and I, we only have sex once a month. Or I actually met with a couple for a while that said we have sex once every 3 months. And I would ask, do you think that's normal? And I would hear things like, well, she's not that interested. And then she would say, he just has a lower sex drive. And I want to be really blunt and say neither of that, once a month, is not normal.
Right.
Once every 3 months, that is not normal. I don't think it's healthy. I think if it is a sex drive issue for the guy, he needs to go to a doctor and get his testosterone checked. Right. But I will tell you, ladies, I'm going to indict some men right now when I say this, that if your husband is not regularly interested in sex, there is a reason why.
Yeah.
Mark my words, 95% of the time, I'm going to be dead right on with that. There is an alternative outlet that he has. And one of those is porn. One of those is masturbation. And sometimes it can unfortunately be an affair. Yeah.
Don't stick your head in the sand, though. I think that's what I would say to the women. That conversation is really important, that there's an open door where your communication can happen and happen honestly, especially in the pornography and masturbation area. Because if that conversation can't happen between a husband and a wife, who is the guy supposed to talk to? And lots of women think they can stick their head in the sand and that he'll just talk to his accountability partner. But really, this is important to you, and this is vital that you can communicate about this without freaking out about it.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of delighted to bring this topic to a close.
Okay.
Wow, that was really solid, healthy answers. And I think that those are things that would actually be difficult sometimes to say from the pulpit. You said really clearly here, and so this format works for that. Let's move on. So we all agree that a healthy sex life is a part of a healthy marriage, and so fits into this series. And a lot of a healthy sex life is built on trust, and a trusting place builds for a place for that. But sometimes trust is broken, and one of the repeated questions, the kind of question we got is, what do I do when trust between my spouse and I has just been repeatedly broken over and over? How do I deal with the real hurt and disappointment that we've built up between the two of us?
Yeah, I would say, I want to echo something that Di said in answer to the last question, and it is, when it comes to the whole issue of trust, you want there to be safety in your marriage, and that you can talk about hard issues without fear of, okay, if I bring this up to my spouse, they're going to threaten divorce. If we talk through that, am I going to get kicked out of the house or whatever it is? And I hear often from women when I've done marriage counseling that they just don't want to know about stuff that their husband is struggling with and things. And that doesn't make your home a safe place. And you need both husband and wife should be able to confess sin to each other. And the Bible says, pray for each other, repent to each other, so that your sins will be forgiven and that you will be healed. And regaining trust when it's been broken, and whenever sin enters in, it destroys trust. It takes time.
It does. And I think there's a little differentiation there because trust that's been broken can be rebuilt. Trust that's repeatedly broken, you probably need some help because it's really hard for one wound to heal, let alone if the same wound is opened up over and over. And so help, I think, is a big piece.
So in an unhealthy relationship, sometimes you're going to see that fighting and broken trust, but let's just be honest, it's two people. So even in the healthiest of relationships, there's going to be fighting. In fact, that's what catches people off guard a lot of times. It's like they didn't expect that they would still have to fight. But in a good relationship, what's positive fighting look like, or at least healthy fighting? What were some of the rules that you guys would apply for saying, you want this to work? Here's how you fight well.
Well, I'll start and say my 2 rules would be never, ever, ever, ever threaten divorce. That is not a joke, and you don't play around with it. You're in it right now. If you're married, you're in this for the rest of your life. So divorce is off the table. You're in this. Okay. And then my second one would be don't ever bring up stuff from the past that you keep bringing up over and over and over. If it's something you've worked through before, it's off limits to throw in their face again.
That's good.
And know this, that we've talked about this a fair amount in this series, that one of the negatives with people is that they create this facade about their way their marriage and their family looks. And it's really, I think, cool in the church to say my husband and I, or my wife and I, we never get in any fights. That's just not true. You put a man and a woman and you lock them in a house together, they're going to have conflict. And if you don't fight with your spouse occasionally, you don't talk to your spouse then. But when we do pre-marriage counseling, we teach this great way to work through an argument that's fair. It's called the speaker-listener technique. And it's almost based on this movie back from the 80s called Lord of the Flies. It was a book written years ago, but you'll remember in that book, these children were stranded on this island and they kept arguing with each other, and they had to create this way that they would listen. And so they would pass a conch shell around, and whenever the conch was passed around, whoever held the conch had the floor. And the speaker-listener technique is similar in that one person at a time talks, you rephrase it, you listen to each other, and you basically repeat the question back, and
it takes all the drama out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
It takes a lot of the emotion out of it.
And that, I mean, that's a great tool that if you need help with that, that's something that the staff, we can sit down with you and really in one 45-minute session can kind of walk you through the process of this speaker-listener technique. But, you know, Di and I have been married for 23 years now, and...
Oh, we never fight.
Yeah. Well, when we do...
I'm always right.
We kind of just out of habit walk through this process of this speaker-listener technique.
I'm still right.
Yeah. let me amp the situation up a little bit then. In a healthy relationship where you're going to fight, man and woman in a room, it's going to happen. What if you use this technique and everybody listens and everybody participates and you still fundamentally disagree?
Yeah.
Just no matter what happens, you both are diametrically opposed to what the correct answer is. What do you do? Fight forever?
Well, I think if you're in a legitimate disagreement, like a quote-unquote fight, I'd get help. That's a great opportunity to call the church and ask us to intervene and maybe be a mediator in that.
I would say it's probably not a secret that we both have pretty strong personalities. So people ask me quite often, how do you guys get along so well when you're both very strong-willed or strong leaders or just pig-headed? And I would say we do fight for our view of things or fight for what we believe in. I think that's human nature a lot of the time. But I also know when I should be quiet, because there comes a point where I'm willing to fight for something because I believe in it so strongly. And there's also a time where I know this isn't actually helping us or healthy for us to continue to fight over something. We're going to have to come to an agreement, which means somebody's going to have to give. And I hate to lose, and he hates to lose, but you can't view it as losing. It has to be, I'm doing this for the team. And so I know all of us girls probably hate the word submit. But the word submit actually is not a derogatory thing. I think our culture has made it that. But for me, it's this is where I'm going to lay down my will and my fight and let you make the decision on this. And the thing is, he sometimes does that for me too. And so it works both ways. But there's a respect in that of, I trust you, back to trust. I trust you to make the call on this one, and I will support you. And that's the thing, is we like to throw in the face of our spouse often, well, you made that decision, and that was the wrong decision, and you should have listened to me. And that's off limits too, because once you come to a team decision, it's a team decision, and you both made the decision. And
I would just add to what she had said that we've kind of very broadly used the phrase fighting. If you're having like a legitimate argument, disagreement on something, you can't come to a mutual resolution. That's when I think you get a mediator, get outside help. And it's one of the cool things about being involved in a church. When you're making a big life decision and you want to, most of the time, I mean, the hope is that husband and wife, that you're unified in those big decisions. And there are the rare times in your marriage where a decision has to be made. It's time sensitive. You can't not make the decision. Right. You have to, but you cannot agree on what that decision is. And that's where what I think she's referring to is there are those moments in 23 years of marriage. It's probably happened maybe 2 or 3 times that entire time. Where we haven't agreed, even at the end. We haven't agreed at the end, and she has said, all right, your call. I support you. And
you say it easily, but I don't think you realize how incredible the answer is. How many people could learn, we don't have to fight to the death on this. Yeah. Or this doesn't have to go on for an eternity. There is a way, in trust, with mutual respect, to finally bring this thing to a conclusion. In the same topic of trust, an interesting question came up over and over that I think you both will like, and that is, multiple people said, and both men and women said, I'm a little frustrated that my spouse's sense of self-esteem seems to rise and fall so much on what I say about them or what I feel about them. And I think say is probably the big thing. What do you guys think about that?
Want me to go first? I am a big believer in, if your spouse needs you to compliment them and you say you love them, why wouldn't you compliment them? Why wouldn't you look for every opportunity? And I think it's a discipline. We're really good at being critical. I'm really good at being critical. I look for the dumbest things in even strangers. That doesn't match, or that, that was a weird haircut or whatever. But I've had to train myself to look for positive things and then say them out loud. And sadly, sometimes the hardest person to compliment is our spouse, the person that we love the most and cherish the most. And so complimenting on any and everything, make it a habit, get good at it, set goals for yourself. Say, today I'm going to compliment my spouse 3 times before I go to bed, and you'll get better at it.
I think there's a great book that was written years ago that many of you have probably read, and it's called The 5 Love Languages. And I've preached sermons on this before, but it talks about the 5 ways that people give and receive love. It's acts of service, quality time, gifts, physical touch, and words of affirmation. And just about every one of us, we give and receive love in one of those areas, and some of us can do it in multiple areas. I think the key thing is making sure that your spouse, person that you've chosen to be married to, knows that you love them. Yeah. And you need to determine, how do they receive love, because that's the way that you should give them love. And where the challenge is when you naturally show people love in a way that's different than they receive love. And that would be us.
Hilariously, of the 5 love languages, you're 5 predominantly. I mean, 4 of them, and I'm 1. And they're not the same. So yeah. I show love by washing your car or by doing your laundry. You could care less. You would like me to
slap me on the butt.
Yes. And back to the goosing. Back to the goose. Yes. Or say something nice, or spend time with you. Yeah. So,
or buy me something.
Big gift person. Yes.
So this person could help their spouse by understanding. That's how they receive love, and yes, they could help them out a lot.
That helps with kids too, by the way.
Speaking of kids, let's take it out of, so we've had it really kind of focused on how a marriage just impacts those two people, but a marriage often involves a family and a home and impacts all of the people around them as well. And some of the questions were really about how our marriage impacts our kids, and people kept asking, how do I show my kids a healthy marriage? Should I shield them from every fight? Should I let them know we're sexual, or hide all that stuff from them because it's creepy? I mean, what do you guys think? How do you model that to your kids?
Well, I'll take it on the really practical level and just say, no, you shouldn't shield them. I mean, obviously they're not privy to everything, but I mean, even in a disagreement or a situation where you start arguing over something, I think it's very reassuring for kids to know mom and dad disagree on things. They both have their own opinion, but they still love each other. Well, how do they know that we still love each other? Because they see us show love to each other too and spend time together. In our home, it's a joke that when mom and dad go someplace fun, they don't get to go. And that's because we want to spend time with each other. Now, occasionally we will take them someplace fun, but usually that's for us. Those are just, I mean, those are little ways that they are reassured and feel, I don't know, it's a security, it's a home and family security.
Yeah, for me, I can think of a few things that I think it's okay for your kids to see you argue. Yeah. And what they need to do is they need to know that a couple in a married relationship can get into a fight, make up, and still love each other when it's over with. If anytime you disagree with your spouse, you do that completely in private. When your kids are married and they see a couple and they get into a fight with their spouse, right, they haven't had it modeled for them that, disagreements and working through them and forgiving each other afterwards, that's just a normal part of life. But I also think this is that we have great parents in our church, and I'm really proud of the families in our church, but I am always concerned that sometimes families in our church place their children in a higher priority than they do their marriage. Right. And they run their whole life around their kids and not that. And I think it is vitally important for your kids to see that you love your wife. Yeah. And to see that you want to spend time with your wife. That's why I always say you need to be going on vacations with just your spouse, where your kids get dumped off with grandpa and grandma. And then they'll ask why, and they'll complain, and they'll be upset about it. And you get to say, because I want to spend some time with your mom, because she's my favorite. And all that's going to do is it's going to reassure your kids, dad loves mom, mom loves dad. When they go to school and they hear stories about their friends' parents getting divorced and things, it just provides that extra level of reassurance that mom and dad really love each other and want to spend time together. And I have to mention one last thing with this, that the number one thing that we need to model in our homes is that Jesus is the center of our homes. And I think too many of the homes within Canyon Creek, the kids are the center of the home, where church is the first thing that becomes optional based upon the kids' schedules and things like that. And I want to say that as for my house, we will serve the Lord. Amen. That my kids, I don't care how tired they are, I don't care how busy they are, we get them up and we bring them to church because we want them to know that the center of our household and the center of our family is Jesus and is involvement in church. And sometimes on Sunday, you'll see my kid, he'll show up, sit in the front row with us, and he's wearing his soccer uniform because he's got a game, or he's wearing his basketball uniform because he's got a game. And my daughter will leave early Sunday morning and drive up to church all the way from her sorority because this is a priority for our family, that we go to church together. And that's one of the number one things that your kids need to see mom and dad make a priority within their marriage and in their faith.
Yeah. Let me take the same question but put a point on it. What if you're a single parent? So how do you want your kids to grow up and understand what healthy marriage looks like, but you don't have one. Yeah. You're not in a marriage. How do you help your kids see that?
I'll take that one. This goes back, in my opinion, back to the church thing.
Yeah, I thought,
is you want them to see healthy marriages, and you have them around church and they see husbands and wives love each other. You get your teenager involved in the youth ministry and they interact with youth leaders that are married and have healthy relationships. They need like I call them like weird uncle and weird aunt relationships with people.
Minus the weird.
Yeah, weird. Morgan's weird.
Okay.
Because you want them to see something that's healthy modeled for them. Yeah. So honestly, I mean, single moms.
Growth groups are a great
Growth
place.
groups are another way for you to see it. That's great. Honestly, single moms, you're my heroes, especially the ones of you that make sure that your kids are at church. You are doing the right thing. And you are going to reap what you sow. There will come a day when your kids are going to serve Jesus, and you're going to look back at that moment when, even though it was hard and I was tired and I had to do it by myself, but I got my kids up in the morning and I brought them to church, or I got them to growth group on Sunday night. That is going to be a miracle years from now in the lives of your kids.
That's good. I've got a few more, but there's two questions that I don't want to miss. And so I'm going to skip a couple and come down to, and these kind of live in their own category, but I think they're important. And the first one really springboards off our message over the past couple of weeks that came from Dan Hammond, I think. And that is, we had a number of single people ask us this, and there's a heart behind it that says, do you really think that there's somebody out there for me? Is there someone out there for everyone who wants to be married?
It's a good question. I guess I can start and say, and I really hope this doesn't sound trite or this is what a pastor should say, but your number one concern is you and Jesus. And you and Jesus being in a good relationship puts everything in priority for any other relationships that come from it. And then I would add in another piece, which I think is a little more broad, which is you should, as a single person, I mean, as a married person too, constantly be working on you, improving your health, improving maybe even studying and growing as a person and improving different talents or skills that you have. Because the healthier you are, the more you're going to contribute to a marriage, but the more prepared you'll be when that right person does walk into your life to contribute to that relationship.
Yeah, there's nothing that is going to make someone who's single more attractive to somebody else who's single than they're focused on their life and their career and their relationship with Jesus, and they're highly driven, and it's almost like, for all intents and purposes, they appear content being single. That makes you very attractive. But I guess I would simply say in answer to that, I think if you have a desire in your heart to be married, you become the person that you need to be, and in God's timing that will come. Yeah. Right. And I want to say this, that I get asked, probably the number one question I get asked from teenagers is, does God have one perfect person for me? God gave you a free will. You choose your spouse. And, you know, he places characteristics inside of you that you are attracted to in other people. But ultimately, there's not like one perfect person for you. You choose who you're going to marry. You made that decision. So if you're here and you're married and you're wondering, did I marry the right person? As I have said for 11 years of leading this church, if you were married to them, they are the right person. But God lets you choose.
And I think that is a definitive answer for our singles on why pay attention to this series. Because we are preparing you, if you have marriage in your heart, to be the kind of person who's going to be great at being married. One last question, really, and there's a ton that would have been fun to get to, but one final one. And this came from a lot of people. Okay, we've heard all this, but we really are having problems in our marriage. We have got real issues. What should we do? What's next?
First of all, you're not alone. I think there are probably people sitting around you that are having real issues too, or have been through real issues. So have hope. That would be my first answer. You can give the practical piece of it.
Yeah, we have a great ministry at our church that I want to encourage you to take advantage of, and it's our marriage mentorship ministry. And these are couples that we have trained over a decent period of time, and their passion is to help people in their marriage, and they will come alongside you for up to 3 months and meet with you on a regular basis and coach you in your marriage and walk you through different things. And I would say if you have a challenge in your marriage, or maybe you don't have an issue, but maybe things aren't as great as you wished they were, take advantage of this ministry. These couples are extraordinary, and they do this as an act of service to Jesus and a way to bless our church. And just as they would be a blessing to you, the opportunity to serve you is a blessing for them. And just let us know on your connection card, or call into the church office and say, I'd like to be connected with one of the marriage mentor couples. In my opinion, they want to serve. This is the area they serve. Let's keep them very busy.
The cool thing about that too is you establish a relationship with another couple, so that if down the road you have something come up or you have a question, you've already built a relationship with somebody that knows you and cares about you and has history with you that you can check back in with. And I heard someone use this example once, and I think it's great. We go to the dentist twice a year, once a year, how often you go. You take your car in for an oil change or maintenance or whatever. We do these kind of maintenance things on things that are less important than our marriage relationship. And so having that kind of a tune-up or a check-in is really beneficial for anybody. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily a marriage mentor couple. It could be good friends, or somebody that you can be honest with. And I think that promotes healthy marriages all around, because we're all making each other better.
Yeah, and in addition to that, take advantage of everything that the church offers in the area of marriage and parenting. And if you're engaged, make sure to do pre-marriage counseling. This particular growth group cycle, one of the growth groups that they're offering is called post-pre-marriage counseling, meaning you got married, you didn't know there was such thing as pre-marriage counseling, and now kind of coulda, woulda, shoulda. We're offering post-pre-marriage counseling as a growth group. There are great growth groups specifically geared around marriage, and there are marriage conferences and things like that. And I think you invest in things like that before you have issues.
Yeah.
And that just needs to be kind of a regular habit, that maybe in the 3-semester growth group cycle, if you're a married couple, one of those semesters you're involved in a growth group that strengthens your marriage.
Just underscore again, we have resources to help. We have people, groups.
And don't give up.
We can help.
Yeah.
Don't give up. This has been a lot of fun. And I think that these were really practical questions. In fact, I bet this becomes a resource that people go to again and again. So thank you for your honesty. Thanks for having fun with it. But I think some of your answers were extraordinarily good, maybe even better than they were. And this is going to be really great for Canyon Creek Church. So that's it. You're free to enjoy Mother's Day now.
I want to say one last thing. You asked these questions, so don't be mad at us for answering them.
And next week, it's what women want.
That's going to be good. That's going to be really good.
I'm on vacation next week.